Hey guys, how's it going? Preparing here. So in a recent patch in Path of Exile, they released 4 new uniques, and 2 of them, namely the unique Chain Belt and the unique Siege Axe, have brought up a decent amount of discussion among the more veteran players in Path of Exile, and they mostly want to talk about the fact that these kind of go against the grain of the game. While uniques are really cool and all, they feel that these are like far too powerful and just shouldn't exist in the game. And there are some merits to their points, but I feel like there are other uniques that kind of take the cake here. So in Path of Exile, unique items are notoriously, double-edged. So they have a really powerful bonus, and the really good uniques, in my opinion, have a really interesting or really big downside. So, before I go into too crazy, too extreme examples, we can take a look at a unique like the one that I use in my character, which is Searing Touch. Searing Touch, because of the increased burning damage and +2 fire, it gives you a really big advantage with some builds, obviously mostly fire builds, but, at the same time, it's a staff. Staffs suck. You give up your shield slot. So even though it's a really powerful weapon for what I'm doing, if I had a shield that had 400, maybe 500, maybe 600 energy shield, along with a decent amount of spell power, along with a really high spell power wand, I probably could get similar amount of damage and still have the defensive side of using a shield, which is fairly significant. However, because of the way my build works, I really don't want that much impact damage, and I just want to maximize the burning damage, because if I maximize the impact damage, then I can kill myself to reflect. So there's a big drawback there, and I can circumvent that using Searing Touch, which is a really, really cool way to do things. I mean, you're using a low-level unique that some people often discard when they're first playing the game because they think it sucks. But it's absolutely perfect for some builds. But it's not necessary. And that's where I feel most uniques in Path of Exile should be. I think that's where they really have the point where they're really, really neat. Other uniques are kind of like necessary. So if you're Chaos Inoculation and you're not a far away ranged build, you probably need some kind of freeze immunity. So Dream Fragments kind of fits that role. But there's a few other freeze immunity items, so it kind of works out that way. I don't think it's too big of a problem. But then on the other side, where I feel unique items are like really, really crazy, is where they undermine the value of rolling items. So what I mean by this is, let's just say that you were a two-handed sword user. The two-handed unique sword suck, like really suck. But even if they were pretty good, kind of like the mace one, the Marohi Urki, even if it was like pretty fucking good, you could still roll an item that's better than it. For instance, with Marohi, it's a really good mace, but it's really slow. And there's too much damage. So characters that are vulnerable to reflect, which is pretty much all of them using maces, except for like the CI Vault Pact ones, rolling a mace is fine. And rolling a sword is always going to be fine. So what this leads to is people who use these builds, who use items that don't have like super crazy uniques, it's pretty fun, in my opinion, to roll items. It's pretty fun to look for them, and it's really cool to see how your character changes through the series of items that you get. And this is especially true for the primary slots, like the weapons, and to a lesser degree, like the rings, the amulets, that kind of stuff. It's really awesome. And the flip side of that is, if you're like a bow user, you have Lionized Glare. And Lionized Glare, I think it takes an absolutely insane bow to top it. So much so that I've seen maybe 1 or 2 up to this point, and because of that, it undermines the value of actually rolling a thicket bow, I mean, yeah, if you're leveling a character for, maybe a week, you don't have that much currency, maybe you want to pick up a thicket bow, maybe throw a couple Alks, throw a couple Chaos, but, you're not going to spend that much. And you're not going to do it because ultimately you're going to save currency to try to buy a Lionized Glare. This is a pretty crap mechanic, if you ask me, because a lot of the really cool parts of the character really involve just getting the same thing. It's different in the case where you'd use a Lionized Glare compared to like a Searing Touch, because a Searing Touch is not the best for all fire builds, it's not the best for all spellcaster builds. But Lionized Glare is pretty much the best for anyone that uses any type of physical bow attack, which nowadays is pretty much everybody. So that's really, really lame. There are a few uniques like that, and the argument that's being, posed is that these two new uniques that came out recently have the same effect. The Siege Axe, I'll show you guys here, I don't agree that this is really the end-all be-all of all axe users. I think if you dual-wielded axe, it might be, or if you use an extremely expensive spell, it might also be. I had a dominating blow build in mind, which maybe I'll show you guys in a later video. But you use like a spell that costs like 300 mana, and then you have the attack speed on top of it, and you just can't cast it enough. You can't get that much mana regen, so it kind of undermines the value of blood magic. But that's kind of good because that increases the diversity of what you can do with your character. So I feel this axe is excellent. It's a very powerful item, but it's not the end-all be-all of axes. So people can still roll siege axes, especially if they're going elemental builds. A lot of people like to use elemental cleave or something like that, and this is a pretty crap weapon for that. So in my opinion, the axe is very cool, unique. Maybe the damage should have been a little bit lower, but overall, I think it's great. I think it actually signifies how to balance uniques on the upper end of the scale. However, I think the belt is really dumb. Overall, being chilled, being frozen SCI really sucks, but in the state of the game that we're in, with CI being as ridiculous as it is compared to life-based versions of the same build, having chill immunity and freeze pretty much immunity as well in one item that actually has great stats and actually has good enough stats for characters that are like spellcasters is really ridiculous. While this is the state of the game right now, maybe this will change at a later time where HP builds are more favored, but I feel like CI already has a lot of like really powerful uniques in the off slots, like the Dream Fragments ring, like Rainbow Stride on the boots, even like a Treasy's Foible, the amulet, is ridiculous for CI. There's a lot of these uniques already, and adding more to the list in an already ridiculous type of builds in Path of Exile, I think isn't really fitting right now. So I can kind of agree with the belt, but all in all, I think things will get adjusted, things will get rebalanced in some way or another, and eventually they'll be probably balanced out, probably fixed. For now, though, it's really a pleasure to see these uniques come out. Not just these, but every time there's a new patch, these uniques are largely created by people who buy the $1,000 supporter packs, and it's really fun. The game really changes by a great deal with a lot of characters. For instance, the new Siege Axe really had me thinking about re-rolling a different type of character, and eventually I probably will. But for now, given the limited supply and the huge demand, I'm not really willing to pay quite the premium at this point in time. So we'll see how it'll go from this point on. But overall, some really nice uniques, some pretty shitty ones, but in the end, the game always gets better. Hope you guys agree, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.